One of these films burned onto cinema screens in an era completely overstuffed with Stephen King adaptations. If King so much as sneezed his cocaine back out into a tissue, you better believe Dino De Laurentiis was hiding in the trash, ready to snatch up the film rights. Today it is remembered as a middle-of-the-road entry in the Horror Master's cinematic tapestry. The other film burned onto the streaming service Peacock in an era somewhat stuffed with remakes of those very same stories, making King fans feel 17 again. But which is the best? The original adaptation of Firestarter was released in 1984, 4 years after the novel's limited, but well-received, release. Directed by Mark L. Lester and adapted for the screen by Stanley Mann, Firestarter avoided Kubrick's perceived mistakes by recreating the novel pretty damn faithfully. So, Stephen King must have been a huge fan of this film then, yeah? No, of course not. He compared the movie to cafeteria mashed potatoes.
If you like the characters, you care, and then...
Potatoes! Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew.
Was King correct? Or was he just flexing his notoriously harsh judgment once again? Well, my friends, grab a spoon and let us dig in. But first, a message from our sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by the unbeatable taste of wheat and raisin Chex. Tired from a long night evading the government? Wheat and raisin Chex. Need energy to massacre an entire facility? Wheat and raisin Chex. Use the discount code HauntedChexFish to get 10% off. Like the book, Firestarter kicks off in the heat of the action, with a father and daughter on the run from a group of suits. These are our heroes, Andy and Charlie McGee. McGee? Yeah. There aren't enough McGees in narrative fiction. Fantastic. Evidently, they've been pursued by these sinister folk for some time, and it's making them very desperate and very sweaty. Daddy McGee holds his head like a man whose dog just ate the last sausage roll. Which also gives us a hint of his powers, and an inkling as to why they are being hunted.
I ain't turning down my $500.
As they continue their never-ending escape, we are gradually informed of the story so far. Andy McGee was once a volunteer for a clinical trial, but was secretly orchestrated by a shady government branch, nicknamed The Shop. He undertook the experiment and, like Heather Locklear in the next bed over from him, instantly developed psychic abilities. He and Heather continued their experimenting at home. 9 months later, they produced their very own tiny Drew Barrymore. The abilities were passed on to the child, but her potential for immense psychic power was off the bloody chain. Pyrokinesis is her speciality. And the Shop worries that one day, when she hits puberty, she could wield the destructive strength of a nuclear weapon.
Go to hell!
For now, she's just melting butter and warming up her cocoa. Firestarter gives us a small array of villains to root against. There is the Shop, which crops up from time to time in King media, like Golden Years and the Lawnmower Man. It's a decent antagonistic force. Andy and Charlie do feel severely outnumbered and outgunned by the seemingly endless swarms of men in suits on their tail. Many of these guys in suits, however, are bland fodder. Therefore, some specific villains are introduced to give the bad side some flavour. First up is Captain Hollister, aka every 80s aging white man in a suit villain. The difference here is that he is played by none other than Martin Sheen, who was no stranger to playing a 1980s aging white man in a suit villain in a Stephen King adaptation.
You cowardly bastard! You're not the voice of the people, I am the voice of the people! The people speak through me, not you!
While the character starts off as a typical baddie, he becomes more interesting as his plans start to come together, culminating in pure giddy madness when Charlie knocks over some wood chips.
She did it! My God, she did it and we got it all on tape! Holy Christ, I knew something was gonna happen, but I had no idea that tray actually flew and she controlled it! Jesus!
Fuck yeah, wood chips! Oh.
Jesus!
We've also got the reluctant, regretful scientist who created the initial drug and has a wonderful way with words.
That's insane. Is it? Is it? Then allow me to progress from insanity to utter lunacy. Suppose there's a little girl out there, the power someday to crack the very planet in two like a china plate in a shooting gallery.
Holy Christ, my God, Jesus!
Moses Gunn plays Dr. Pinchot, who is a nice countermeasure against some of the more wacky villainy in the second and third acts. But of course, the real star of the show is John Rainbird, the psychopathic Native American Vietnam veteran assassin with an eye patch, played by the renowned Native American actor George C. Scott. That issue aside, Scott is of course a great award-winning actor, and his inclusion really elevates the picture. Firestarter is not a particularly scary film, but the dodgy intentions of Rainbird as things progress is a nice, creepy treat. Suffice to say, he is also a master of GoldenEye 64's Slappers Only mode.
You want to teach me how to play that? Because I'm terrible at games, you can beat me all the time.
At its heart, there are three factors that really make Firestarter shine a little brighter. First of all, the protagonists are so effortlessly easy to root for. Constantly hounded and unable to live their lives, they are a pair of true American underdogs. The concerns of the shop can be justified, but this version of Charlie feels incredibly innocent. She doesn't want to use her powers. She understands the consequences. She misses her mummy, who was unceremoniously murdered. All this makes the explosive action all the more shocking. This tiny girl could cause such carnage? The second factor is how the second act unfolds. Andy and Charlie are captured by Rainbird and taken to the shop's HQ. They are to be tested, studied, but they can't get Charlie to cooperate. Consequently, a thrilling plot thread emerges, with Rainbird posing as a lowly orderly to gain Charlie's trust. This evil bastard, who we've seen murdering fucking postmen in cold blood, is suddenly acting like a friendly old man who is afraid of the dark, slowly encouraging her towards bad practices. It is chilling, but it brings a smile to my warped face. Thirdly, because I admit I am simple-minded, I just love it when shit blows up.
She did it!
Charlie performs not one, but two magnificent showdowns, demonstrating the full extent of her fiery fury. No car is left unexploded. No suit jacket is left unburned. She is going to town on these twats the same way I play GTA. Ba-bam! Ba-boom! The film's finale is a satisfying slice of vengeance, reminiscent of Carrie White's telekinetic revenge, though lacking De Palma's signature directorial and editing flair. Still, it is no surprise that the producers of Commando snapped up Mark Lester to direct that 1985 film. Both endings share a delightful fireballs-to-the-wall chaos. Imagine if Charlie McGee and John Matrix had teamed up, decimating a corrupt South American research facility, perhaps. Now I feel robbed. And, because this was the early 80s, it was all practical. They had stuntmen set alight, leaping off trampolines. They had giant flaming meatballs speeding across wires. Now, I'm not one of those guys who outright hates any CGI, but practical explosions can never be topped. What else is there to say? Art Carney and Louise Fletcher show up as a lovable, hospitable pair of country bumpkins. They take these strangers in, and, despite barely knowing them, they stand up against the might of the American government for them. It's well cute. When the old man took a bullet, my heart lurched. No, Art Carney!
What you say?
Also, the film doesn't take itself that seriously. There is still a smattering of King's goofy tics slipping in here and there, including some literal toilet humour.
Alright, buddy, come out of there. You mind waiting until I put my feet out?
So, Was Stephen King right to compare this to cafeteria mashed potato?
No, not this time. It's a total fabrication.
Firestarter is not a masterpiece by any stretch, but it does the job. In other words,
Back off. Back off.
the remake of Firestarter began germinating in early 2017, right when it became apparent that the new version of it was going to rake in some serious bucks. Years of slow production later, Blumhouse delivered their film in 2022. Was it worth the wait? Whereas the original film was a very direct adaptation, Firestarter 2022 is unafraid to play things a little looser. The tragic events of the McGee family, now renamed the Coopers, presumably out of second-hand embarrassment, occur in chronological order. We meet Charlie as a baby in her crib, her powers already on the brew. We then start skipping ahead through points in time as the new Andy, played by Zac Efron, becomes increasingly Scoobied, and Charlie gets stronger. The mum actually gets a larger part, seeing as she isn't already dead by the time the story begins this time. Woohoo! Sadly though, it basically amounts to a couple of scenes of the husband and wife bickering over their child. Nothing frightfully entertaining, but why do I suddenly feel so hungry?
Pancakes.
Pancakes? Pancakes?
Pancakes.
Chocolate, chocolate.
Buttery muffin.
Buttery muffin.
Buttery muffin.
I don't think I caught your name.
Pancakes.
Hey!
It is here that we already realise the contrast in tone, compared to the original. Firestarter 2022 ain't messing about. No, this is a deadly serious tale of a little girl who can generate fire with her mind, don't you know? Anyway, the plot kind of follows the same trajectory, yet at the same time, it does make some significant changes. The parents still met during a strange drug trial and produced a daughter. They are still hunted by a shadowy organisation, and Mummy still ends up dead. They still go on the run and interact with country locals, and ultimately end up in the evil facility for some boom time. Yet this time around, the whole affair feels joyless. Instead of a dude jumping into a toilet, Charlie blows up a toilet stool at school and is labelled a terrorist. Andy is now a self-employed therapist, claiming he can help you quit smoking for a hefty fee. What he actually does is use his mind control to fuck with their heads, something he admits is probably more dangerous than he understands. Before, he used his powers to desperately save his family, to try and contact the media to stop the shop. But this Andy, he just comes off as deceptive.
I always wanted a little girl myself, but I guess that wasn't to be.
Oh yeah, remember the lovable old couple who welcomed the McGees into their home? How about we morph them into a depressed, short-tempered alcoholic?
Hey!
And on life support, with a son who died in a car wreck of their own making. Oh yeah, great, thanks. I'm having a great time watching this. Fucking... At least this Rainbird is portrayed by actor Michael Greyeyes. Finally, some appropriate casting after George C. Scott and then Malcolm McDowell in the sequel. But Rainbird's been altered too. Gone is all of the scheming and trickery, and now he's just a blunt instrument. He replaces all of the henchmen hunting down the family, and is now the singular predator, stalking them from location to location, like a psychic Terminator. Wait, a psychic what?
Terminator.
Charlie is a bit of a Terminator herself here.
Say, that's a nice bike.
I like your bike.
She is definitely more evil than before. She lacks the childish innocence and good intentions of Drew's version. Now she openly admits she wants to kill people. Oh, but only bad people, so it's okay. No, kiddo, that's not how it works. No matter how many times Charles Bronson tries to tell you otherwise. Get out of here, Bronson. Go on, get.
This ain't over.
So yeah, even the magical child at the centre of this ordeal has been stripped down to a dour, sullen boar. Even with this more aggressive take, they removed the midpoint rampage and gave that to Rainbird instead. Without delving too much into spoilers, as it is a brand new film, I bet you're looking forward to the Remakes iteration of the huge climactic set piece. Well, sucks to be you then, you chump! All you get is Charlie killing about 5 people in a single hallway, And then there's a small, vague, possibly completely unrelated explosion that occurs after the fact. Nothing to do with Charlie. Someone in the facility forgot to take their buttery muffins out of the oven.
Buttery muffin.
No satisfaction. No entertainment. Just a kid pretending to be 8-bit Bowser in an empty corridor. The most interesting thing happens long before the end, when Charlie goes to pet a cat. This cat gets a little big for his Puss in Boots. So Charlie loses it and burns the fucker down. Don't get me wrong, I love cats. I hate it when they get hurt in real life, or on the screen. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Baylor Tar. But the way this is edited, well, I had quite the chuckle. Blip. Meow. Meow. Blip. Overall, the film feels relatively minuscule in scope. Losing all of the men in suits pursuing them makes the shop feel like a much smaller threat. As does the fact that their evil base consists of only 3 rooms. Captain Hollister is now a woman. Martin Sheen has had a sex change, which will bother some people, but not I. What bothers me is that she never gets excited about flying wood chips. My God! And he doesn't have this larger goal of alerting the media and taking down the shop and taking down the government that way. He just wants to trick people and have nosebleeds. To summarise this, it feels like the entire film cost the same amount of money that the original film's ending cost alone. God, I feel like I'm rambling, so I'll just throw some final points out there and then get out of here. I have seen a fair few people dismiss the remake simply because Zac Efron is involved. They won't even watch the damn thing because of him. Now that is stupid. Trash the film because you don't like how it drains the soul out of a classic story. Fine. Don't trash the film because you're 45 years old and weirdly upset for some stranger used to make Disney Channel content that was never meant for you in the first place. Get a grip. I suppose if Zac Efron starts dressing like a cartoon bat and jerking off over mermaid toys, you'll come around on him too. John Carpenter is the primary composer of the soundtrack. The soundtrack itself is fine, and has more than a little of the Halloween piano tune in there. What is really fun here is that Carpenter was originally hired to direct the 1984 film. When The Thing was a massive flop, Carpenter was replaced, so it's nice that it somewhat came around for him. Speaking of things coming full circle, there is also the matter of Martha De Laurentiis. Her first producing credit was on the 1984 Firestarter, and her final credit before her death was the 2022 remake. That's nice. That'd be a really neat note to end on. But I'm gonna mess that up by adding one more point. Fuck the new ending. Skip ahead to this timestamp to avoid spoilers and to hear my final verdicts on the 2 films. Charlie murders the bad guys in the hallway, but is then confronted by Rainbird. Remember, this is the guy who killed her mum. But then she decides to fall into that cliche trap. Fuck all those henchmen. Now I have the chance to kill the guy I really want to kill. I have learned that killing is wrong. Rainbird then picks her up like a bride over the threshold, and they enjoy a nice walk along the beach. What the fuck? Whatever. Okay, on to the verdicts. Best protagonist. I care about Andy and Charlie in the original. I want them to find safety and happiness. Can I say the same for the Remakes iterations? Not really. That new Charlie is truly a Firestarter. Twisted Firestarter. Hey. Best antagonist. The original version of the shop feels like an unstoppable institution, with added Sheen and Scott to boot. Of course, the original wins here. Best kill. 1984 takes it again, though I was tempted to give it to the remake cat. Bleh. But no! Drew Barrymore fires a spicy meatball at this guy and whee! Ka-chow and bang! Whee! Whee! Best film. The remake tried to make a serious take on Firestarter. On paper, maybe it could have all worked out. The final product is not for me. I give best film to the original. Right, that's enough from me. Tell us your thoughts and your opinions on these 2 films. Which Firestarter do you prefer?